Welcome to the Ministry Pivot Podcast with Russell St. Bernard, a podcast designed to assist leaders as they seize the season of opportunity by pivoting toward it. Let's get started with today's episode.
Hey, family, Reverend Russ. Super excited that you decided to join us back here at Ministry Pivot. Thank you for joining, whether it's tonight, whether it's today, whether it's in the afternoon, whenever you are watching or listening. Excited to have you on. I have another great pivot happening with us today in our Pastoral Succession series. But before we go to that, don't forget to go on to ministrypivot.com and to like, to comment, to share, to subscribe. Don't forget to do that on all of the podcast avenues and platforms that you have, of course, on the website. Don't forget to check out our articles and to check out our other conversations. And if you need strength coaching, if you want someone to walk alongside you, I'm honored to do that. And so hit the button that says coach on the website. But today we're continuing in our series of Pastoral Succession. They're going to be popping in and out throughout this time with us. And today we have none other than the Reverend Pastor Janae Pitts-Murdock, who is senior pastor there of the Light of the World Christian Church, and super excited about all that she is doing there and all that God is equipping her and her family and her team to do there as they make an impact in Indianapolis. Please make sure that you don't forget about the show notes. And without me talking any further, let's go into my conversation with Pastor Janae. Pastor Janae Pitts-Murdock, thank you again so much for getting on to Ministry Pivot on today. Super excited that you took the time to be with us and thankful for the work that God is doing through you there. I gave you a brief introduction, but I did not do it justice. Can you please just give those who are watching, give those who are listening a little bit more of a background on who Pastor Janae Pitts-Murdock is? Not fully, because we can't do all of it, because I've heard you phenomenal and I see the work that you're doing. But can you give them a little bit of background, better than I did?
You are so kind. First of all, thank you for having me. I appreciate being invited to be a part of this series and the great work that you are doing to help inform and influence those who are serving in ministry. And I'm just honored to participate. Now, so who is Janae, right? Folks here at Light of the World call me Pastor Janae. I've been here at Light of the World Christian Church since 2019. I came as the interim pastor. My contract was for 15 months. I planned to start and end in 15 months. In fact, I put a clause in my interim contract that if the church had not yet found a pastor, that they could only extend my contract so long. And really? So I came intending to be an interim, and then the Lord was like, you make plans, I laugh. So the church elected me after that interim season as their 6th senior pastor. And so I have been here at Light of the World since then, and it's been wonderful. We are serving the northwest side of Indianapolis in Indiana, and I get to serve an amazing 157-year-old congregation. And yes, I'm the first woman who has been the pastor here, but it has been a tremendous experience. I am married to Reverend Dr. Jeffrey Allen Murdock Jr. He's faculty at the University of Arkansas. He's a trailblazer in his own right. He's not only just tenured and endowed, but he's also the founding director of the Arkansas Center for Black Music, the 2021 Grammy Music Educator of the Year. I love me some Jeffrey Allen Murdock. And I wouldn't be able to do what I do if I wasn't married to the man I'm married to. He is a tremendous partner and a great cheerleader. And in fact, I applied for the interim job at Light of the World because my husband said, you should apply for this. So here I am. We have 2 sons, Jeffrey and John Patrick. And that's me in a nutshell. Oh, and I cannot forget, I'm also an active member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And I get the privilege right now of being the Midwest Regional Chaplain.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Pastor Janae, you said so many things, several of which I knew. We had a small conversation, and I've obviously had to come. Shout out to my pastor. Big shout out, Kingdom Fellowship AME Church. My shout out to Pastor Matthew Watley, who actually finally connected us, because social media wise, we have been talking, but Pastor Janae, for those of y'all that don't know, came out to our TKN summit 2 years ago and blessed us on this exact topic, pastoral succession and transition. And so it was super cool to hear about you, but you said a lot of things. So the first thing you said that I think I remember you saying it a little bit in the session, but I do want you to unpack. You came to Light of the World from a different ministry, but you had a 15-month contract. Help those who are watching, who are listening, understand kind of your reasoning, your thought behind that. And then I'm gonna ask you about the fact that you're the 6th pastor in this 100 and some change church. So, but The first part is, how did you get to the 15 months? Why did you want that in there?
So I did not want to be the interim who manipulated the people for the settled job. I think that Light of the World deserved an honest process and a good process. And I did not want the interim role to interfere or conflict with their search for their settled pastor. And I wanted to do my part to help protect that part of their process. Now, mind you, their search team and their planning teams, they were intentional about having an interim and a search for settled. So the church was really doing their part, but I also wanted to do my part. I wanted to alleviate any concerns that there might be some backroom dealings, or because I have seen interim roles transition into settled roles. And sometimes there's always this element of suspicion and skepticism around it. And so I didn't want to set the settled person up with any shadows or any aspersions. So I wanted to make sure that I did my part as the interim to include a clause in the contract that my season would be defined. But also, sometimes interims can find themselves in perpetual interims because the search process is slow or the church is indecisive. And so instead of the church making necessary decisions to move forward in their settled search, they get comfortable in the interim season. And then the interim ends up being this perpetual interim whose contract keeps getting extended over and over and over again. And so I didn't want that to be the case either for me or for the church. And so in my interim contract, there was a specific clause that dictated how many extensions could be done, because there had to be a hard close and a hard end to the interim season so that the church could move on in its settled season.
Yeah, no, that's actually one, super smart, but also two, I think super faithful, right? Because you were putting you and your family out. Now it's wonderful to hear you said that your husband said, hey, you should apply for this, which is dope. But that's a lot, because at the end of 15 months, it could have gone a different way. But you all trusted God, which I think is super phenomenal. Now, help me. I want to talk about you being the 6th pastor of the church that's over 100 years old. I think that's like, I don't know. I think that's enough to weigh into. So I want to do that, but also help me. But before we talk about that, what were some of the things, I guess, in those 15 months? And again, where I'm asking for the pastor, the leader who's watching. We're going to talk a little bit in a second about this whole legacy pastor piece, right? But what was in your mind to try to accomplish, to try to standardize in those 15 months? Because you gave them a time frame, but you also gave yourself a time frame.
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. I want to applaud Light of the World for choosing to hire an interim. There is great benefit in having seamless succession from one pastor to the next. but there are also some cautions and some dangers if there is work that the congregation has to do to ensure that the settled pastor can be successful. And I applaud Light of the World for saying, we're not ready for a settled pastor. We need time. We need an interim to give us time to get ready so that a settled season can be successful. So when I came in as the interim, I came in with no expectations of staying. I came to be a good interim. I came to stop the church's hemorrhaging, both financially and around their attendance. I came to help the church heal around its grief.
Yeah.
I came with very intentional things to do. I did not come to make drastic changes because I'm not staying. I am here to get the church ready so that the settled pastor can be successful. In fact, my goal was to be such a good interim that the settled pastor would write me a thank you note. That was my whole goal.
That's what's
so when you use the language faithful, that's a huge compliment to me because I wanted to be faithful. I wanted to be faithful to God, and I wanted to be faithful to the people, because sometimes congregations can be a part of a transaction where they are collateral damage when pastors are looking for the next step up in their career path. And I wanted to care for the people, love the people, honor the people, and protect the people because they're God's people. So thank you for using the language faithful, because that was really my desire. My desire was to be faithful to God and to be faithful to the people. And so what were the things that I wanted to do? I wanted to get the ship steady. So it meant that I wanted to provide the people consistent preaching. I wanted to show up every week ready and prepared. I wanted to help the people kind of reclaim their identity, because our church had been through some difficult years. And we'll talk about this in a second. This is how I got to be number 6, because number 4 was a 43-year pastor. Number 5 was 7 years, and it was a rocky 7 years. And then I came as number 6. And so because number 5 was a difficult season, and the highs and lows that came as a result of his tenure, I wanted to do my part to help the people reclaim their identity, reclaim their confidence, and to help give our church some stability. So I wanted to show up ready every week. I wanted to love on the people who had been shepherdless for a while. I wanted to love on them, be God's presence for them. I also realized that I was a unicorn in that I was a woman. So I also had to play this dual role of not only being their interim, but also being a woman and helping to demystify what it meant to have a woman as a leader in this role. But God was faithful, and the Lord God, came and did what God does. And then a pandemic happened.
I was waiting for you to say it, because you said 2019.
6 months in, then the pandemic. Now, I covered a lot of ground in those 6 months, and I praise God for the ground that we covered, because we covered so much introductory ground in those 6 months that the people were willing to follow and hang on through the pandemic. So I hope that answers your question.
No, it does. It does. And it actually raises another one. So I said faithful, but I'm also going to throw in another word, is honorable, because understanding, and I know we've had the conversation around this, but understanding that you had a legacy pastor, right? And then you had a pastor that was there for 7 years and it was rocky, to still say yes, right? To be an interim is honorable, because I'm very clear there were other options. I'm very clear. The meme pops up in my mind now, get somebody else to do it. I'm very clear but for you to stick, for your family to stick, that's that's beyond worthy of salute. And that is super awesome. And just super excited and encouraged. Hopefully those who are watching, those who are listening, don't forget to download the show notes, but hopefully you all are encouraged as well, because every pastor that comes in behind a pastor, it's not going to be smooth, right? It's not going to be comfortable. It's not going to be in a place where everything is right. And even in those situations, God is still God, right? And God is still provided, and the right person. For those that are listening, those that are watching, in part one of this series, I had a conversation with several people. Shout out Pastor Rodney, shout out Pastor Anika, shout out Pastor Walter. But Walter was the one who reminded me that Walter Thomas Jr., New Psalmist. He was the one that reminded me that before he got into New Psalmist, he was, of course, a pastor in Pennsylvania. But God selected him to be that pastor because COVID hit during that season. And I really believe that there are only a certain group of pastors that God would call to help shepherd congregations through that season, right? Some pastors had it and they had to be, but there's a handful, you're a part of the handful, who got the church and then COVID hit. Got the church and then it was like, okay, cool.
Yes.
Let's do all of the things at one time.
All of the things. I used every single one of my degrees. I have 3 master's degrees. I have my first master's degree is in public policy and management from Carnegie Mellon. My second master's is a Master of Divinity from United Theological Seminary. My third master's is an MBA, a Master's of Business Administration from the University of Memphis. I used all 3 of those degrees during that pandemic season. And so, shout out to all the pastors who survived the pandemic, because it required so much of us. Because for those of us who wanted to be faithful leaders, because the congregation is going through their stuff, but we're going through it too. I'm not just a pastor. I am a pastor who is also navigating pandemic. I am a pastor who also has husband, spouse working from home. Kids are doing schoolwork at the dining room table. Everybody we're all going through this together. And yet still having to show up and try to be a kind of spiritual leader, a voice of hope and faith in a time when it was wild. And for me to be in an interim role, for me to have come after such tumultuous moments in our church's history, I learned what trusting God really was. See, there was some time I was trusting ability, because I showed up with ability. And many of us, we show up with ability. We show up with the ability to administrate. We show up with the ability to preach. We show up with the ability to galvanize and mobilize people. We show up with ability. But there comes a moment in ministry when our ability runs low. And we don't just need ability, we need the presence of God. And that is what I unashamedly, unabashedly, I came face to face with what it means to trust God.
Yeah. No, that is awesome. That is awesome, Pastor Janae. And also for those who are watching, those who are listening, y'all see why she out there killing. Y'all hear that? That was a whole run right there. And she's just talking. That's a whole run. And she's just saying what's inside. Because you're absolutely right. And I think that is one of the keys to a successful succession, is having people who understand their ability, but God's authority, God's power, God's anointing, and God's covering. And so I'm super thankful for you. Now, I do want to jump in to the question, the thought. If you all are watching or listening, you heard the earlier series prayerfully. If you haven't heard them, go back and listen to them. There's a quote that we were able to be a part of, Barna Research, also Dr. Bree, big shout out, Black Millennial Cafe. They did a study a couple of years back, and the quote speaks about the fact that a super majority of pastors, 70% or so of pastors who were in their 60s, 70s, said that they were not going to retire for the next 10 years. And they said they were not going to retire. The only way they would retire is if they were sick, if they were unable, or if they died. And I wasn't trying to hone in on that. I still am not with this series. What I wanted to talk about is the vacuum that creates with so many legacy pastors, people who were pastoring congregations for 40 or more years. And what does that now mean for the search committee? What does that now mean for the new pastor that's going to come in? How does that look? And so when I say those things to you, I would love for you to share with us your thought, your process, and one, discerning, right, that you wanted to be in this space. You wanted to help bring the ship to order, which I love, because I think you cared about God's church, and you still care about God's church, right? But I think I love that part of it. But what are your thoughts when it comes to, or how did, better, not your thoughts, how did you navigate taking over from, you had now you had double duty, right? So you didn't just have a legacy pastor, you had taking over from a legacy pastor, right? The person that many of the people got saved under, baptized under, married, buried their kids, or buried their parents, and all of the things. Then you had a couple shaky years that you weren't even involved in, but I'm confident you took all the blame for. And then you came in. So help us with that. How did you navigate that? How would you suggest someone navigates that?
Yeah. Let me add another layer. Our 43-year legacy pastor was not just legacy in our church. He's legacy in our city. He has not lived here for a decade, but they still play his commercials on the radio.
Really?
Okay. So our legacy pastor was an icon, not just for this church, but for this city, for this region. In fact, across the nation, there were many pastors who looked to Bishop Tom Garrett Benjamin as a pioneer and trailblazer around innovation, church growth. Here in Indianapolis, Light of the World was one of the first churches on the radio, on the television, Black churches on television. I mean, just in so many ways. He was an author. He was a visionary. I mean, he was larger than life. Pastor number 4 served here for 43 years. He was not just an icon here at the church, but also an icon in the city. And so part of my opportunity, or part of my challenge, is to do 2 things. One is to show him honor, but also 2, to exercise boundaries. And I would think those are 2 of the greatest pieces of advice to that I would give persons who are coming behind legacies. That because my number 4 is not just a legacy at the church, but also a legacy in the city. And so I show him tremendous honor in that, Light of the World would not be what she is, or had accomplished all that she has accomplished, had she not had a Tom Benjamin for 43 years as her leader. And so I am deeply appreciative for the ways that his blood, sweat, tears, sacrifice, and charisma, anointing, giftedness helped to build this church into what she is. At the same time, boundaries are important, because it is easy to lose one's self in the shadow or reputation of another, and attempt to relive or reclaim a kind of nostalgia for the people who missed that season, and kind of lose yourself in trying to recapture or reclaim that. And so it was important for me to practice healthy boundaries on how I understood where that legacy ended and where mine begins. or where that ministry transitioned and where mine begins, even though, you know, in many ways it is still in the water, in the walls, in the memories of the people, and will be for many years to come. So honor, boundaries, and then the third piece is to have a healthy and clear self-perception, to know what my strengths are and what my growth edges are, and to be confident in who God has built me to be, so that I don't feel some kind of way when I don't measure up to other people's expectations, or so that I don't get arrogant when I exceed people's expectations. And I think that kind of healthy self-awareness of how God has built me and the assignment that God has shaped me for, and to be faithful to that assignment in that season, so that I do not view my predecessors as my enemies, neither do I unhealthily pull my predecessors into this current season. I think that there's a healthy separation, but also a kind of healthy integration. And that comes with honor, boundaries, and self-awareness.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's great. Again, if you are watching, if you're listening, thanks for getting on. Look at the show notes, because there's no way you caught all of that. And she did it in threes, because, you know, she's a preacher. And so there's no way you caught it.
That was so unintentional. Was that in threes, no, for real?
It's what happens. Don't worry about it. It was in threes. It was in threes. Don't worry about it. It was good. And it was great. And I think it's needed, because Pastor Carter, who I had the opportunity to sit with in the first season, Rodney talked about the fact that you gotta kind of know who you are, because you're following such a big mantle. You're following such a big, and I know and again, this is, you know, again, I'm thankful for my pastor, Pastor Matthew Watley, because I'm not called a senior pastor. That's not what the Lord has for my life. I'm called to be the support. And I thank God for you all who are called to the senior level, because I do know that there's just an extra weight that is on that. But then being uniquely who you are and how God has created you is just super pivotal and impactful. So thank you for sharing that, and for hopefully those who are watching, those who are listening, and maybe you're seeking a church that has a legacy pastor, maybe you're even on the search committee, thinking through that person and knowing that they're going to be uniquely them. It is super important and super, I think key. I want to ask you, because I had the opportunity again in season 1 to talk with the first session of this, rather, to talk with Reverend Dr. Anika Brown Wilson. And I had the opportunity to talk with her, and we were talking about just the difference, and you and I were able to talk off camera about this a little bit, just the difference that it means from being a woman and being a man in this leadership role. So now, not only are you taking over a legacy position, now not only are you taking it over after a couple rocky seasons, you're taking it over as the first woman pastor. I don't even know what question to ask you, because I have no idea what that, and I did the same thing with Pastor Brown. I was like, I don't even know what to say, because I can only imagine, and I'll share what I shared a little bit off camera with the people who are watching today. Now, I know for Russell just to do this, I just got to show up. I just have to, and it's so much more than that, because even Pastor Brown shared about the opportunity of being, soft and hard, stern at the same, like those things I don't even have to think about, right? There's not even a space for that. And so I really just want to, you know what I'm trying to say, but I don't know what I'm trying to say. So I want to stop talking because I want you to say it.
Well, I appreciate the question, or the attempt at the question.
Yeah.
Let me begin here. Part of my PhD study, I'm in a PhD program at Christian Theological Seminary. It's the PhD program in Black sacred rhetoric. It's the intersection of preaching and rhetoric. Part of what we're studying in rhetoric is the ways that messages are communicated in more than just words. Messages are communicated in images. Messages are communicated in fashion. Messages are communicated in all sorts of ways. Architecture communicates messages. And so when we talk about rhetoric and how messages are conveyed, the way I show up in a space is rhetoric. It conveys a message. And there are assumptions and implicit biases, expectations that people bring with them when they show up to church, and they have expectations of me when they see me. And they have expectations of me when they hear me, whether they are spoken or unspoken. There are expectations. But then I begin to communicate who I am, what I'm about, the layers that are connected to me in how I show up. It is in what I wear. It is in how my hair is set. It is in the makeup that I choose. It is in the shoes that I wear, whether I'm in flats or whether I'm in stilettos. All of this conveys a message. And in the very first Sunday I preached at Light of the World as the interim, I wore a white robe with red patent leather stilettos. All of that was intentional. And I said to them that don't get it twisted. I'm a girl and I'm pretty, but I can fight. So don't test it.
I love it.
I'm from the west side of Detroit.
I love it.
And I have hands. They are holy hands. And you can choose how to experience them. Right. Because people will make assumptions because I'm a woman that I'm a pushover, or that I'm a punk, or that I'm soft, or that, I can be manipulated easily, that you can shower me with compliments, and that somehow that will cause me to fawn over you. But I am a leader. I am a woman, but I'm also a leader. And so it was necessary for me to articulate, like, I know y'all showing up with expectations and you don't know me yet, but let me just give you a clue, a little bit about who I am. And so as a woman, we have to work through a few more layers than the brothers do. But that doesn't mean that the brothers don't work through layers at all. You all just have different layers. And for women, we are working through centuries of sexism, centuries of misogyny, centuries of bad theology, centuries of male language to describe God that excludes the feminine when considering the divine. And so we work through all of that when we show up to the pulpit. And those of us who know this, we are savvy and at how we get at these things. But ultimately, God be glorified. God uses us just like God uses the brothers. But it's with a little more color and a little more flair.
Amen. Yeah. And I want to say, I am feeling myself reminiscent in the space that I was in with Reverend Dr. Anika, right? And I said this and I say it again, like, I know this is important, but I also know that for Russell to even assume that I know what to say is false. And so I don't. But I think this space is super important. And I'm encouraging for you, and I'm sure you are already, the same way I was encouraging for her, for the sister who's watching, right? For the leader who's watching. Because I love the point that you made, right? That at the end of the day, while you're female, I'm male, you're still a leader, right? And sometimes it's not looked at that way, and it should not be. Because the truth is, as long as we know of any struggle, y'all been leading, period, right? Like my mama was my first leader, period. And I think that's a part, but not just in the home, in the community, right? I'm listening now to the latest Dr. King book. And while it's so many things going on in that book, there's so many things in King's life. Sister Coretta, like she held everything down, which you would not have an appreciation for because of who King was, right? But let me ask you this question, because I know our time is running. But if there, this is the way I want to say it, and if I'm wrong, it's fine. You can edit it, because I told you I don't know what I'm saying right here. But what I want to say is there's some things that churches who are looking, right, after a legacy pastor, maybe not even after looking, but they're looking for a senior pastor, and the one that God sends may be a sister. There's certain things that those churches, I want to say, should not do, but they don't know they shouldn't do it because there's a difference, right? And then, so I want to ask you, are there some, and what are some things that churches, search committees probably should not do in this process as it pertains to honoring a sister? But the second thing is, I'm gonna assume, and again, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. There are certain things that the sister coming into the role should be aware of, right? And so for her, I'm saying, not you should not do, you should be aware of. But for the church, I'm confident there's some stuff that we just should not do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, that's such, we could take a whole episode to talk about that, because it's layers, right?
Yeah.
It's layers on who was your mentor and who formed you. Some of us had some of us sisters, we had great mentors, but others of us have not had great mentors. And so we come in with a level of naivete because we have not had good mentors. And there are others of us who've had great mentors who come in with less naivete. We come in, probably, pretty, tainted, but we come in with less naivete. And so to answer your question, I would say, one, it begins on who your mentors have been, and prayerfully a person who desires to serve as anybody's pastor or senior pastor has been mentored well, and has someone or some people to whom they are accountable to, and people who they can say, these fingerprints are on me. I can tell you whose fingerprints are on me. When I show up in a pulpit, I can tell you whose fingerprints are on me. And so I think part of the advice has to do with, when you show up, what are you showing up with? Have you been mentored? Have you been groomed? Have you been prepared for the moment? The other piece that I would say is, as a woman, I showed up expecting sexism. I showed up expecting patriarchy. I showed up expecting to have to fight my way to be taken seriously, and to receive the authority that the job demands. That's what I expected. I was pleasantly surprised that I did not have to do nearly the amount of fighting that I thought I would. I was pleasantly surprised that the Lord had already prepared the way for me to be supported, and supported well. In fact, I knew I was supported when I saw my employment contract, right? That's how I knew I was supported. And I was continually affirmed by key leaders in the congregation that folks wanted to see me win. But I would also say, to prepare yourself, you asked Dr. Nika this, you asked her, where was she surprised? I think we should also allow ourselves to be surprised, because when God gets moving, God has a way of quieting our adversaries and raising up champions and supporters. And God has a way of going ahead of us. And if we are but willing to follow where God is leading, then we will find ourselves surprised, like, oh man, like God really will fight your battles. And so I would say to be prepared for that. The other thing I would say is don't lead where you haven't followed. So if you're if you want people to practice spiritual disciplines, you want to work on yours. If you want people to give faithfully, you need to work on yours. If you want people to be mature in their interactions with others, to not be gossipers, to not be backbiters, to not be manipulators, that's an area also for you to work on. God is not asking us to be perfect, but as leaders, we lead from the front. We don't lead from the back. Let me not say the words. The most complicated and confusing leader is the leader who leads out of a duplicitous mind. Like, we have to be clear on who we are and the areas of our lives that we're working on. And to not demand from others a path that we ourselves are not willing to walk. So that's long and short. That's not necessarily women specific, but I mean, it applies for the brothers and the sisters. Oh, here's the last thing I'm gonna say. And this is something that I'm doing a better job of. I realized when I became a senior pastor that all of my mentors are men, which means that I have been socialized, conditioned, and groomed with a male version of mentorship. But because I am not a man, I need other models for mentorship. I had great, and I still have great mentors. I mean, the best mentors ever. But my closest mentors are men. And it meant that I did not have enough models that work for mentoring women. And so one of the things that I am learning to do as a senior pastor is to mentor people across the spectrum who identify as experienced, inexperienced, men, women. And so some of this I am learning as I go, but I'm trying to make a concerted effort to be more intentional about connecting with women. Because women, we don't connect. Most of us don't connect like the brothers connect. The brothers follow you to revival. The brothers carry, your briefcase. The brothers are driving you to wherever you're trying to go. And the women don't necessarily show up in that same way, although women still desire to be mentored and women still desire to be shepherded. And so I am learning new ways of shepherding sisters in ways that meet their needs as well.
Yeah, no, that's phenomenal. And I want to say what I also said to Reverend Dr. Anika, is saying with you. I love the fact that you're working on and thinking through how that mentorship relationship works, but I know it's needed from what I see on the other side. And so whatever support I could be, Ministry Pivot could be, I'm there, because there are, and since then I've reached out to Dr. Anika and connected her, I think at least with 2 people, but I'm gonna do some more. But I just need to know where to send people, right? Because I don't have it. You're right. Like I'll unashamedly tell you, even now I have a group text of dudes who, I'm the only one that's not a pastor in the group anymore. We were all youth pastors. They all went ahead and said something different to the Lord. I'm not saying that. But it's straight as guys. And that's just a thing. They gave me a thumbs down.
Yeah. That's that AI emoji stuff.
That is. But I definitely support it. So I encourage that. I do want, though, and again, if y'all listening and watching, we're going to put in the show notes, Pastor Janae's information so you can reach out to her. So you can also be a part of that mentor group, maybe just pick her brain. because there's way more that we can get to, but we know the algorithm. But I do want to ask you one question that I have. This is my last question, but if you have more to say, I'm with it. The algorithm will be okay. But I do want to ask you, as you were talking about it and as you continue to talk about the ministry there, I want to ask you, what are you excited about next, right? In leading this congregation? I know it's probably a billion things. But what are you excited about next?
Oh my gosh. I'm excited about our future. I mean, like, God has been so faithful. Like, things that I thought would have stunted our progress, God expedited. The things that I thought would slow us down, God multiplied. Like, I have been amazed at how God is like, listen, if I ain't proved to you that I'm blowing wind on your back, I don't know what will teach you. If you don't trust that I'm in your corner, you don't get out here and do what is in your heart to do. I am excited about our future. And I have not always been comfortable and confident leading in such uncharted territory. But I had to raise some money, right? I had to raise money. Like, one of my biggest fears was around fundraising. And I needed to raise big money because there was a project that I wanted to do. And so I asked another church to partner with me, another church that was more resourced than we. I asked them to partner with me to do this project because I didn't think that I could do that. Light of the World could do this project by ourselves. And so the other church said yes, but then it didn't manifest. So Spirit was like, so what you gonna do? You gonna drop the project or you gonna keep pushing? And I was like, oh Lord, but this means I gotta raise the money. This means I gotta raise all the money by myself. Every conversation I had, Spirit told me what to ask, and I was so scared, and I didn't. I would ask for like 10% of it or 20% of it, and Spirit was like, how many times do I have to tell you I got you? Let me tell you, we ended up doing that project all by ourselves, raising not just enough money, but raising more money than we needed to raise, executing the project without the partnership of another church. And for me, God was like, I got you. I got Light of the World. I have been with this church for 157 years, and I'm not about to walk away now. Whatever is in your heart to do, whatever is in your mind to do, whatever is in your passion to do, whatever the people want to do, trust me. Stop looking to the left and to the right. We don't trust in chariots. We don't trust in horses. We don't trust in men, but we put our trust in the name of the Lord. So you asked me, what am I excited about? I'm excited about tomorrow because I know God is waiting on me.
That's what's up. That's what's up. Pastor Janae, I can't thank you enough for taking the time out to be on Ministry Pivot, to pour into those who are watching, those who are listening. Super excited about Light of the World and all that God is going to be doing and all that God has done there already. You are a standard, and I'm super excited just to know you and for you to take a time out again to be on this pivot. I really do appreciate it. I think it's going to impact the people, but I'm excited for you all and excited to see what God is going to do next. Thank you again for getting on.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. Super excited that you jumped on, and hopefully you were inspired by the conversation between Pastor Janae and I and all that she shared. She's doing great work, but even thinking about what that work looks like in pastoral succession and all of the things that she listed. And please make sure you go back, because you did not catch it all. Look at the show notes, like I just said, so that you can be able to be more empowered, to be more informed, but also be more equipped if God is calling you into this season. And obviously, if there is others that you can reach out to her as well for all resources that she has and all of the coaching and mentoring that she will be able to do for you. I'm excited about what God is doing in this season. As we always say, as this is your season of opportunity, all you have to do is pivot toward it. God bless.
That's it for today's episode of the Ministry Pivot. We hope you enjoyed listening and gaining some valuable insight. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform so you never miss out on our future episodes. And if today's show has resonated with you, please leave us a review to help others discover our podcast. For more resources and updates, visit our website at ministrypivot.com. And be sure to join our email list as well as follow us on Instagram at Ministry Pivot. Thanks for joining us today, and we're excited to have you back next time for another insightful episode of Ministry Pivot. Stay connected, keep pivoting. We'll see you soon.